we can go with it. Yeah.
Well, thanks. Well, let's do that. And actually, speaking of reality, I had a really interesting thing this week
Oh, yeah.
where, well, you know, you and I've been talking a lot about fawn response and how it's not a natural, like, first primary trauma response. It's a secondary response.
Right.
So
Exactly.
I've had really mixed responses from different communities.
Go on.
And, well, I found it fascinating. So the whole thing being that fawn response is a choice. Maybe it's not highly conscious, but it's there is a thought process to it. Whereas primary, as in fight, flight, freeze, there is no thought. There's no rationale. It's just survival. And when I've shared this with one
Pop
group,
psychology is the word you're looking for.
okay. Okay. Yes. So when I've shared this with one group, there's been, oh my God, that's really helpful. Oh yeah, no, I agree with that because yes, I know I'm doing it and I'm aware of it and I'm thinking about it and I notice I have to do it, that I have to stop it kind of thing. And then another group are going, that's really disempowering, it's shaming, and, you know, that I'm being judgmental, essentially. And I'm at risk of throwing people to the wolves where you're
This is
concerned.
my judgmental face right now, but
yes,
go
okay,
on.
I can see. Well, what's so fascinating about it is that the clients are the ones that are like, this is amazing, thank you, that's really helpful.
Of course.
Right, and other therapists are, that's really shaming, that's really judgy and disempowering of people. And I find, first of all, just find the fact that the two responses are so conflicted, but also that it seems, and I, you know, must say that my sample group is small, so it's not like I've done a wide survey of this, but it's that the therapists are really quite desperate to hold on to it as a trauma response instead of seeing how empowering it could be. And I wondered, because I've had that pushback, do you know kind of the science part of it? In fact, the like actual neurological functions and chemistry?
I mean, there's nobody quite as judgmental as a therapist or a clinical psychologist.
I'm getting
to be quite honest with you.
Okay.
You know, fawn is a secondary learned behavior. It's not an innate survival reflex. Now, fight, flight, freeze they're autonomic nervous system responses, right? So they're hardwired. They're involuntary survival mechanisms, which are controlled and triggered by the amygdala and the brainstem. So they're instantaneous reflexive reactions.
Right.
To a perceived threat. So fawning, on the other hand, this involves social appeasement behaviors.
Right.
And that requires higher order cognitive processing, you know? So, and that's learned over time. And it's an adaptive strategy in environments where direct confrontation, which is your fight response, or escape, which is your flight response, is impossible. And where freeze, which is the third response, doesn't resolve the threat.
Right.
So you don't see animals fawning. Now, I've heard your lot say, oh, animals do fawn. They don't. They don't. If they're in danger, they fight back.
Right.
They flee.
Yes.
Or they freeze.
Yes.
So you can see a rabbit caught in headlights.
Yes. They
That's
freeze.
a freeze response, you know?
Yeah.
So fawning is a behavioral adaptation. It's not an immediate physiological survival response.
Okay. And so this is really interesting as well, because actually, when you talk about the rabbit in headlights, it almost is like freeze is the first and then fight or flight. Is that?
Yes, you could look at it like that for sure, because our instinctive reaction when we get a huge rush of fear is to freeze and then
react,
either fight or run like hell.
Yes, because that freeze point must be where your brain is assessing which way to go, fight or flight.
Exactly.
Right. But the reason that people develop fawn as a response is because they wouldn't have been able to do fight, flight, freeze simply on the basis that they were small, probably.
Right,
when this
exactly.
started.
So they can't fight back.
Yes.
They can't run anywhere because it's maybe their family. And freeze isn't going to make the threat go away.
No.
So now they have to create a coping mechanism for this. But I mean, you also have to look at the neurobiological distinction between them. So fight, flight, and freeze activate sympathetic and parasympathetic responses, right? So they involve adrenaline surges, heart rate changes, muscle priming. So all of the body then sends all of this stuff so that it can deal with the threat. Fawning doesn't originate in the autonomic nervous system. So it doesn't send any of these signals. So instead, it engages what we call social cognition circuits, like the prefrontal cortex, which involves
it must be in there, right?
People-pleasing and compliance and emotional self-erasure, which basically maintains the safety through what we call relational strategies. So it's not about immediate survival in a physical sense with this fawn response, but it's about social survival in abusive or high conflict relationships. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it also is driven by emotion rather than the hormone. Now, there's the argument that all emotions are hormonal, but in terms of adrenaline or cortisol, which drive fight, flight, right?
But we're talking about a neurobiological response.
Right. So it's driven by a different chemical release than, Yes. So fawning is coming, yes, you're scared, but you're also, you might feel guilty and you might feel shame and you might feel like lots of different emotions might be going on, sadness and everything else. And so to restate the equilibrium, for example, say your parent is someone who stonewalls or they emotionally abandon you and they ignore you, you then start people-pleasing them, fawning on them to get them to re-engage with you. It's a tactic to preserve a relationship, right?
Yes.
It's
a complex strategic behavior.
And the other side of it, just having a little like
penny drop.
Yeah, like the other side of it is fight, flight, freeze is. Oh, sorry, that was me. Take my medication moment. The other side of it is that fight, flight, freeze are done to get away.
Yes,
and remove.
It's a primitive, primal safety survival reflex.
Right, and so
fight, flight, freeze.
And yet fawn is to maintain the relationship, to stay where you are.
Yes.
So
because fawning requires an assessment of social cues.
And so when people talk about being hypervigilant, they talk about being able to hear from the way someone shuts a door, walks up a path, breathes, just looks at them, that they are able to assess whether or not that person is a threat or what mood they are in. And so then they know how to respond and move and shift into a position where they can protect themselves. And so that is where the people-pleasing comes in. And that's a huge amount of cognition before the threat is even in your space.
Massive.
Or even realised.
100%, because you have to remember as well that you're anticipating the needs of other people, right? So you're also suppressing your own emotions.
Yeah.
You're managing perceptions. And you're creating a strategy in your mind and on how to deal with this particular threat. So these are really complex learned behaviors. They're not instinctual reflexes. Now, you hear people say, oh, well, people are going to default to fawning. No, they're not. You don't default to fawning. You may freeze first and then fawn.
You
but
might
the
even
primary
flight.
you might flight first. You know, you see it with
Or
children.
fight
They run
and
like hell
flight.
up the stairs.
Yeah.
But your initial response is not to fawn. It's not a primary trauma response, regardless of what your people say.
My people. It's so judgy, Paul. It's so funny. But this is really important to me because I think since we had our conversation about it, and since I've been talking about it with clients or guests on the podcast.
Is that my baby?
That is your baby. Of course it is. Being fed, obviously. But since I've explained this to people, to clients specifically, the liberation in that, the autonomy,
of course.
But this is it. And I think there's a disempowerment in not acknowledging that this is a secondary response. Because what we're saying is you have choice in this. You can choose whether you people please or not. Yes, it might bring up a lot of emotion and a lot of fear and a lot of all the different things, but there is still choice. And you have to question, what are you so scared of that you feel like you need to ingratiate yourself or serve somebody else and squish and erode yourself in order for them to stay in relationship with you? What is it that's keeping you doing that? And if you can answer that question, then there's liberation from repeating that pattern over and over again. Right?
Yes, of course there is, 100%. Because if you're told that your behavior is a reflexive primal response, you can't do anything about it.
Well, exactly. So you disempower people.
You totally disempower them.
This is like, we could start another controversial, the whole rejection sensitivity dysphoria thing.
Don't even start me on that.
I know. We'll have to do that in another newsletter, I should think, because there's that one, and the same with attachment.
Ugh, don't even start me on that either.
This is where we get into wars. We don't really anymore, but yes.
No. The thing with now you've got attachment theory in my brain.
Sorry.
The thing with
RSD,
primary trauma response, like fight, flight, or freeze, is that it's not observed across species, right? So fight, flight, and freeze responses are observed across most animal species, right? Because they're evolutionary constants.
Yes.
Fawning is a social appeasement strategy, and so therefore it's context specific. And it's also culturally influences. So yes, you hear people argue, oh, animals do it. Whilst animals sometimes display submissive behaviors, that's not fawning. Fawning, in the way we understand it as a human response, is way more complex. Why? Because it involves language, it involves emotional labor, and you're not going to like this, it involves social manipulation in order to survive.
Oh, Paul, I am on your side. I have often said that people-pleasing is really controlling, and people get very upset about it. But when I break it down and explain that what you're trying to do is make someone stay in relationship with you without showing them your full self, so they don't actually know who they're in relationship with.
Yes.
And that is controlling. And you're also
100%.
kind of saying you're not allowed to reject me because I feel that too keenly and I'm too sad about it. And so because I do everything for everyone, anyone that sort of says to me, actually, can you back off a bit, is a grade A bitch or whatever, right?
True, right?
And it's a really difficult thing for people maybe to hear, because I also recognize it is a survival strategy. It is a coping mechanism.
It is a coping mechanism.
It's not done with the intent in the way that an abuser...
To manipulate?
Yes.
No, of course not.
It's a self-protection thing.
The problem we have, like a lot of stuff, is that... So initially, it was the fawn response was to do with complex PTSD.
Yes. Yeah.
PTSD. And the problem is that somebody plucked it out and went, oh, this is a nice word, this is a nice explanation, and completely misinterpreted and made it equivalent to fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
And then brought it into pop psychology.
Yes.
Because,
there's
you
no
know,
research.
there's none
anywhere.
whatsoever, you know, but Peter Walker didn't say there was research. What he said was that it was an element of coping with CPTSD.
Yes.
So, you know, it's basically a better way to describe it, which would be how a behaviorist would describe it, would be appeasement behavior.
Yes. And
a
that's
coping
what
mechanism.
It is. I absolutely see that. And I think the more people that see it that way, the more empowered they can be, the more they have choice in what they do or do not do. And that's not to say it's going to be really easy to change that behavior, but but by saying it's a primary trauma response, we are being incredibly irresponsible as a profession, for one, and for two, disempowering
Hugely
so many
disempowering.
People. So many people. So you've got no choice over this. You just do it because of your situation.
Yeah, because of you know, it's something you can't control. Yeah. It's basically, as I said, it's a coping mechanism, but it's also an attachment strategy.
Yes.
So
you're trying to maintain the relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, now of course, because I said the word attachment, people are going to be like, "Oh,
attachment
theory,
attachment theory." Oh, Paul. Well, I mean, people ask me all the time, why does Paul not like attachment theory? And I'm starting... What's very difficult is that I'm coming over to the side. And I was going to call it the dark side, and I'm not calling it. It's the enlightened side, I would say.
Behaviorists will welcome you with open arms.
And that's just it, isn't it? Kidnapping me over that side.
But again, it's when I say psychotherapists, I'm also putting clinical psychologists into the mix too, because they're just as nuts. And
I'm going to get so much trouble for this.
You also have to so you have to look at it from a behaviorist point of view. Behaviorist is very much prove it.
Yes.
And not just prove it.
Oh, no, not just prove it.
Prove me wrong.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
We don't go out to prove that it's right.
No.
Which is what a lot of people do. We go out to look at, can we disprove this?
Yes.
And if we cannot disprove it, then we can start to look at proving it. But when you go into something with, I'm going to prove this works, you go in with a huge amount of biases.
Right. That's just it.
That's the problem, isn't it? So.
Yes. And I think the other thing that you sort of mentioned earlier is that because I think we deal with so much, well, I suppose emotion. And the irony being, of course, behaviorism isn't really about emotion. And I think people get that very confused.
It's not.
It's removed from part of the
And you say that
equation.
to a behaviorist and they say, okay, show me the place in the brain where emotion is produced.
Well, as I said earlier, hormones, right? It's
but
hormones.
That's not the same as emotion.
Well, also, emotions are super subjective. So people react differently to different things.
But it all goes back to environmental aspects.
I know, right? Because this is where people.
Yes,
where
we can't, because we're going to get into a loop.
We are, and it's taken me maybe 2.5 years to come to this place with multiple what the messages to you, because I've read something that makes far too much sense and I don't like it because it's proving everything I know wrong. But I think what happens is, because we deal with emotion and you can't always make sense of that, when you find something that does attach and does explain it, we latch onto it and go, this is it, because it's an anchor.
Human nature.
Yes, because it is absolutely. But the danger with it is, if you don't do the research to make sure what you're saying is actually correct, then there's a problem, because not everyone is going to fit in that thing, that description. You can't,
This is it.
And actually, even then, what's interesting is if we then do go to attachment theory very, very briefly and look at anxious and avoidant attachment, and you might put a fawner as an anxious person and a hyper-independent as the avoidant person in attachment theory, they are both doing the exact same thing, which is to avoid intimacy and exposure and vulnerability. And so ultimately, I think the thing is that when we do start attaching these labels that actually aren't really evidenced and aren't really backed up properly with the research, we start sitting in this blind spot of everything fits this box, and I'll ignore all the evidence that contradicts that. And when we talk about, for example, anxious and avoidant attachment styles, we're doing just that and ignoring the fact that they are both doing the same thing, which is to avoid being emotionally, humanly vulnerable, because that has been such a high-risk strategy in the past. So, yeah, that's where I'm sitting at now with it.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, I've got to go. I've got a client, so I will catch you later.
All right. See you later.
All right,
Bye.
take care. Bye.